Hey, what's up, everybody? So I just finished up my interview with Darron Hay. Darron is a member of our Real Estate Investing for the W2 employee Facebook group. He is one of many interviews that I'm going to be doing over the next several weeks from all walks of life. So different careers, different W2s. I want to make sure, getting the point across of having the right mindset, or not just having the right mindset, but having the mindset that you can invest in real estate while also working a fulfilling and successful W2 job. So Darron's story is a little unique in that he is a general contractor, so he's self-employed and he's been that way for a little bit over a decade. But the reason I wanted to talk to him is because of the way he responded to a post I put in our group just last week and the post was around, what would happen if you lost your single flow of income, which is for most of us our W-2 or our self-employed income. And Darron has a story that nobody should have to go through where he did that. Not only did he lose his single flow of income, but he and his wife almost lost their lives in separate events within a relatively short amount of time. I think it was like 6 days where they went through this situation. So I'm going to be bringing interviews to you like this. So check us out at w2capitalist.com or hit the subscribe button. But we're going to get into Darron's story right now. And I'll just go ahead and hit record because I do this. I was recording an intro for another one earlier, and it took me 5 takes, and I'm sitting here by myself, because I'm critiquing myself. Anyway, hey everybody, I am joined by Darron Hay. Darron is one of our members of our Facebook group, Real Estate Investing for the W2 Employee. And Darron and I connected because of a post I put out there, was basically just getting real. And in the very top line is let's get real. I'll go back and add some topics or something so you can find it real easy. But it talks about the value of having a multiple streams of income, which is something that's taught tremendously. There's tons of books on it that you can find. But Darron has a real world scenario of a huge wake up call for the rest of it. And I'm thankful for Darron being able to go through this, not only being able to go through what he went through, but also to get to the other side and be willing to share his experiences and thoughts with the rest of us that are having trouble thinking. Because this is one of the excuses I hear all the time is I don't have the money and I don't have the time. I've got to focus on my one job, my W-2 job, or self-employed, like in Darron's case. You're self-employed, right? As a general
Yes, sir.
contractor, most of you are. So Darron's been a general contractor for the last 10 years, and he has an interesting story, but he's made it through. And now if anybody can tell you the value of having multiple streams of income, this guy can. So with that being said, Darron, tell us a little bit about your story and ultimately why you responded to the post the other day that I made.
Well, I think the reason that I responded to your post was primarily there is a huge need for people to be able to have basically a backup plan. There are times when life throws you a curveball, and your whole world will change, and it changes radically. And one of the things that I'd like to stress to people sometimes when that change happens, I mean, it is sudden and it beats you upside the head and it'll beat you down. To that end, um, September 27th of 17 should have been my last day on this earth. It should have been a day that, as a general contractor, we were out fixing a house in Olympia, Washington. And it was a house that had a lot of structural damage to it from a leak that had gone undetected for years. I mean, it just had been years. And so anyway, that morning we were out there working, and I was inside, my crew was inside. There was 5 of us, and we should have, and I went back to the truck to get something. I don't remember what it was, but as I was walking back, I looked up at the house, and I just kind of got that uneasy feeling. I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And so I got my guys out, and we ended up putting a bunch of bracing up because it was a 2-story house. We were working down on the first floor, and there was a big second story above us. I mean, they had a huge game room up there and all sorts of other stuff. And then up above that was a really beautiful roof. I mean, so there was, I don't know how much weight was above us, but there was a hell of a lot.
Right.
So I got, we started bracing the thing up, and, as I got satisfied, as I was became satisfied with, the temporary structure, the temporary rigging we put in place. We went back to work. And I was inside about an hour later, and we had a complete structural collapse. And so I was on the wrong side of the collapse. I was inside, and I should have been outside. By God's grace, all of our bracing, all of our rigging held. So it held the second story was up, was held up. The roof was held up, and everything else, because it was all bracing that, I'd stopped work and we'd fixed.
And it's safe to say that if that bracing, y'all wouldn't have paused and put that bracing in place, the whole structure would have come tumbling down, and you and your crew would have been gone, right? Y'all would have been terminated, basically.
We'd have been the guys you see on the news.
Yeah.
So we would have.
So no serious injuries, no life-threatening injuries, but you experienced some injuries, right? You were the only one that had an issue, and
yes. So my in the collapse, I went through the floor and I went down through the structure a little bit, in the process of doing that, as a structure collapses, you spin around. It's like this really cool tilt-a-whirl ride. And, in the process of doing that, I tore my rotator cuff on my right shoulder. I had my carpenter's rig on and had all my equipment and everything. And my rig caught on something and flipped me around like that. And in the process, my arm came up, bam, into a wall. And, it was about all the shoulder wrote.
Yep.
So it was exciting. It was.
Well, I don't know if exciting is the word I would use, but we'll go with it. but so you had to be out of work. You had to start collecting workman's comp, and you're telling me earlier before I hit the record button, it was about 80% less of what you normally generate, right? So there's a financial hit for you and your family. And then, huge.
You need to stress that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a general carpenter or general contractor, my little company was making $300,000 to $400,000 a year. And so on a slow month, I'd put about 25,000 in the bank, and on a good month, I'd put 50 to 60 in the bank. And I had bills. I mean, it wasn't my money, so, I had payroll and all the other stuff, but, those were my gross receipts. And, we were doing really well. Went from that to $1,000 gross, per week off of, workman's comp.
Yeah.
So that was
huge. Yeah. Definitely need to understand that. So, but your series of events did not stop with your rotator cuff surgery.
No, the party was just getting started, man.
Again, I don't know if I'd use that phrase, but you can say that now, right? So your party was just now getting started. So 6 days later, you and your wife got some unexpected news. Tell us a little bit about that.
So 6 days later, my wife, she'd been having, problems in her gut, and we weren't entirely sure whether they were intestinal. We weren't sure if they were feminine. We weren't, really sure what it was. And we were still in the process of trying to figure this whole thing out, right? We were at the whatever the hell he is. We had to go get a scope, and so the doctor comes in, and he just kind of looks at me, and he just kind of has this, this serious look, and he just says, "Can you have it at Tacoma General in 30 minutes?"
Yeah, which is nearby hospital, right?
Yeah, so Tacoma General's the big regional hospital in Western Washington, or one of them, in that part of the country. And so I was like, "Check the wristband, doc. I mean, you got the wrong people. What the hell are you talking about?" And, his whole face just kind of stopped, and he had that kind of look on his face, and he realized that we didn't know. And so there was this really, really awkward pause.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well," and he clears his throat about like that. He says, "You have cancer. Your colon's completely blocked. You're going to die within 2 days if we don't operate today." And you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And and it's just, that thing is kind of, and it just, and you don't really know what to do with it, and, Amy and I just kind of look at each other, and it's like,
Are you serious? We just went through that. We almost just lost you.
Yeah.
6 days later, we're being told if we don't do something about this today, we're going to be the wife. So,
Yeah, so
Now,
so he interrupts that awkward pause and he says, "So do I need to call the ambulance?" And we're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
like, dude, serious, man.
stress the urgency, right? So,
So
um,
so like, nah, doc, I'll save the $1,000 and drive 20 minutes, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I understand why he was offering that to you. There's a little bit of a shock factor there that he wanted to
it,
make sure, you know,
you
that,
know, he wanted to get the old cattle prod out,
yeah, yeah,
get us
go,
going.
yeah.
Yeah.
So before we move any further, your wife now though, she's in total remission. She's not having anything issues with cancer, right? Everything's moving.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we went through had the surgery, 6 months of chemo. That's a whole nother adventure.
yeah.
And she's cancer free, been cancer free
Awesome,
for coming up on 9 months.
great.
Happy, healthy. She doesn't have any very, very few side effects from 6 months of chemo. That's the brand new shoulder,
Yeah,
it works
yeah,
just fine.
yeah.
So,
So
it all's well that ends well, right?
that's right.
Um,
So y'all had a series of events very quickly that eliminated almost, I mean, all of your income, right?
you did.
So the
Yeah.
the point of the post was talking about multiple streams of income, and then
Mhm,
you've done some investing in your life before,
mhm.
and I don't remember, or maybe I didn't ask, but were you investing prior to these things happening, or was this an epiphany when this happened? You're like, we got to do something. What was it
Well,
before or after, or both?
uh, when all this happened, I was at kind of a lull in my investing career. I had invested for quite some time in properties that had title issues, and
So,
we would.
just for clarity for everybody listening, you were going after properties that had title issues.
Yes.
Okay. Because I haven't heard of that before. Most people steer away. They're like, most people steer away with properties that have foundation issues. I imagine you probably go after those too if they have title problems, right? Is that part of it?
Well,
Mm.
when you pay the lawyer enough money, all the title
Yeah,
problems get fixed at some
that's true. That's, I understand.
point.
So,
He's got to keep suing enough people. That's really pretty much all it is.
but so your focus has been going after, which I think is great, because a lot of people, including myself, if it doesn't have a clear title, at least my lawyer advises me not to go after them, right? So
Because he turns around and does it right after you leave.
I don't know. I don't know that he does that. I'm
Well,
gonna
he
ask
might
him
not,
next
but
time. No.
but but those lawyers, man, they talk. It's a conspiracy. They talk.
I've got a great legal team. I don't expect anything of that happening in the background. If it happens, I'm definitely going to look you up and tell you, hey, you were right. But for now, I'm gonna have to stick with those guys are pretty good too. But I do want to dive into. So you were buying these title problem properties
Mhm.
and flipping them. You were doing some buy and hold. What were you doing there?
Um, well, the ones that resolved quickly turned into flips. And sometimes, I mean, it would be, when he buys properties with title problems, your lawyer shows up and basically does the old boom, the old forearm smash, right?
Right.
And some, some people just kind of say okay and go away, and you get clear title. Some people, they're like, hey, come on
Yeah.
now.
Some people want to fight you, right? And what's rightfully theirs.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what it is.
Okay.
So the ones that would resolve quickly became flips. The ones that didn't would become kind of your buy and hold. And I'd lease them out. I usually have possession of them while we were litigating the title. So I'd be the one who would turn around and rent them. So
Okay. So
that's what
you would, even though the title wasn't clear, you still had possession of them,
we.
and you would turn around and lease them out to tenants
Hmm.
even while you're working out the title issues. Is that right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
interesting. I would like to dive into that at some point in time. I don't know if we're going to get to it today because I've never heard of that before. It seems risky to me, but anyway, we'll
It
circle
is.
back around to it if we have
Trust me,
to.
it is.
Yeah. So so you were buying properties, you were flipping them, and then you
Hmm.
had you flipping them or you were holding them.
Hmm.
Now you've went through this scenario of these I mean, just gut check scenarios.
Hmm.
Hey, you're losing your income, possibly losing your wife. And now you've come through that, and you're focusing on. You just told me earlier you acquired a couple of mobile home parks. Let's talk about that for a minute.
So we're in contract. I mean, we haven't closed on it yet, but
so maybe not too much details we need to explain. Okay.
Right. But we're in contract to buy some 2 mobile home parks. And they require a lot of work. I'm used to going through and ripping apart a single family home or even a multi-unit and taking it down to studs. And I'm used to fixing structural framing problems. I mean, there's not a lot these days that scare me.
Yeah. I mean, going through what y'all have been through, I imagine not. That's
so you do learn some fearlessness after this. You're like, come on, that didn't kill me. That's all right. Whatever.
But you know what I love is that you can joke around about it now. There are so many people out there that don't have the mindset of, hey, I did go through that, and they'll dwell on it for the negative piece of it. Why did I have to go that? Why me? But you're like, hey man, it didn't kill me. What's next? Let's go to the next thing. So that's awesome.
It kind of, it really does kind of create a fearlessness in you. When you think about it, like in life or just in general, when all this crap is piling on you and things are changing so intensely, and you start to get to that process where you're starting to experience cognitive dissonance every day. Like, this shit ain't real. I mean, this just isn't real. But the reality is this is my life. When you start to experience that very every day, it becomes a transformative experience. And, content's under pressure. When you pressurize that, and when it cooks and cooks and cooks, the essence of it changes. It just does. How you respond to that change is purely your choice. It's one of those things where it can either be positive or it can be negative, and it choose positive. For no other reason than just to piss off the bad guys.
Yeah, I gotcha. And I was
so at any rate, that's what I learned. And one of the things that I could stress for why it's wise, amazingly wise, to have a second stream of income is because when you're in that spot that your entire world changes radically. I mean, it's just
flipped upside down. I mean, there's really no way better way to put it.
I mean, you hit a brick wall. You drive your truck full speed into a concrete wall at 60 miles an hour, and you survive. By God's grace, you survive. You're standing there and you're kind of like, what the hell was that? At the end of it, at the end of the day, in 6 days, my whole life just was radically altered. And what I can tell you is that when you have to change and when you have to rebuild your life at that moment, when you're under that amount of pressure and that amount of duress, man, it's hard. I can't stress to you enough just the sheer level of mental toughness you have to have. The kind of the intestinal fortitude that you have to have of just, I'm not going to quit. I had a wife and 4 little boys. I was the sole provider for a family of 6. And, I had accounted for the, the possibility of me dying at work. I'd counted for, what if I become disabled and all this other stuff. I never accounted for what if the day comes where I refuse to hop in the truck and drive off because I don't know if my wife's going to be alive when I get home.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm not going to work today. I'm going to stay home, take care of my kids, that sort of thing. And it was one of those things where I never accounted for that. So I never appreciated the financial contribution a stay-at-home mom makes to a family. And I'll tell you what, man, it is huge.
Yeah, it's certainly hard to put a number on that. My wife's the same way. It certainly, we can figure out, okay, what does a nanny make or, whatever, but she does so much more in the amount of time she's able to spend with our kids and love on them and raise them the way we want to is just, there's no price you can put on that. So I agree with you 100% there.
And so that day comes. And so then you got to figure out, okay, well, the circus still has to eat. And, what now what do we do?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
oh, by the way, I got my arm strapped to me because my shoulder doesn't work anymore. And
Yeah.
the only thing I've ever done most of my life is construction. And carpenters have two hands for a reason.
Right.
It's just one of those things. It's like, man.
So let's talk about the mindset piece, because I think you hit on something there that's hugely important, is that the mindset. And by the way, I keep looking out my window because there's a mockingbird that keeps tackling the window. Has a nest over here, and every 4 or 5 times a day he'll come up and he'll almost fly into it. But anyway, sorry for the distraction. But so the mindset.
Are you sure that's not a comment on your show? The mockingbird.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I don't know you, Jane. I'm already picking on you.
No, that's fine. Regroup. Let's refocus. No. So, you think about the mindset that you had to go through or that you had to change, I mean, your world's turned upside down. You ran into that brick wall. What are some of the things that, for people who are going through similar or possibly not even as bad, but what are scenarios? What are some of the things that you had to do to get your refocus and get your, get your feet back under you from a mindset perspective, right? What were some of the things I didn't ask you that ahead of time. Maybe you don't know, or maybe it was a support group around you, but what are some of those things that, if people find themselves in your similar scenario, other than saying, well, I'm not that bad off because I listened to this video and I've got a second stream of income coming in. What are some of the things that you can tell them to do about shifting that mindset back to the positive?
Well, I think one of the things that jumps out at me is, there comes a point where, your faith, whatever you believe,
Right.
if you believe in anything bigger than yourself, that gets real. I mean, it comes down to, man, it's you, me, and the man upstairs. And, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And tell you what, man, it's hard to tell you just how real shit gets sometimes. So the benefit of having, some gray hair on your head is that, that you've survived tough times.
You can see my gray hair from there. I'm really going to have to turn that light.
I was looking at, I was looking at the way my, the sun was
okay. I thought you were referring to me. Anyway.
No,
You're in a serious moment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's why I keep my hair so short, so otherwise I'd look like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
But at any rate, just things get real that really do. And, the benefit of having lived a little bit or having people around you who have lived maybe, or, just anything like that, is you understand that the sun comes up in the east the following morning. And, I'm not trying to sound glib, and I'm certainly not trying to sound flippant about it, but tomorrow will come, unless you die, and then,
right,
somebody else's problem, right?
Yeah.
But tomorrow comes, and tomorrow, each day when you wake up, that day is what you make it. And, you can't change yesterday. Today is all you got. Tomorrow's not promised. And so now you're at this spot where it's like, okay, again, my arm's strapped right here. For part of that, I was still high, off of pain meds and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
She was high off of her medicine from her surgery. I mean, man, we were quite the couple for a while.
Yeah.
So, thank God the boys weren't babies.
Yeah.
But you just get to this spot where it's like, all I've got's today. Yeah. And I may or may not be here tomorrow. I mean, honest to God, there are days that you feel like this. I may or may not be here tomorrow, but I'm going to try to make something out of today.
Yeah.
And so to reset that mindset, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to go do carpentry, right? Because I remember my arm's right here. Right. And so part of what I did is I got to the spot where, I reset a little bit. And I remembered that you generally are the average of the people you hang out with.
Love it.
So
preach that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. It's like, if you hang around with a bunch of losers, well, you're going to be a loser. If you hang around people who believe they have a positive mindset and who believe that you can do anything, anything you put your mind to, it's, that's the kind of mentality you're going to have. Yeah. So it's one of those things that I reset. So I started spending a lot of times at, investor meetups. I started spending a lot of times at RIAs,
Yeah.
just things like that. I started going to all sorts of free events. I didn't have any money. So I started going to every free event. I mean, I was there.
Right.
And it's just one of those things it's what I did. And I also internalized at some point, it's like, okay, life's radically different. I've changed. My circumstances have changed. I've got to embrace this. I mean, I had no choice. I had to do this because, again, I got a family of 6 I'm providing
Yeah.
for, and my arm's right here, and all my tools in the truck I can't use because my arm's strapped to my chest. So it was just that I had to. So that kind of leads me into the next part, which I had to take action. And kind of going back to what we learned in the Army, man, go do something, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Go do something, damn it. Just get up and go do something.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so I'd start to do that. And then, you learn from your mistakes as you go out and you screw up a few times. And, you make a few offers and people laugh at you and make fun of you. You're like, I'm not sure I want to do that again.
Yeah. Well, it is definitely a learning process, and that's one of the things that people who are suffer from analysis paralysis, they'll ask me what I need to do. I was like, something. I mean, literally, it's do something. It doesn't matter if it's not going to be right or wrong. You may win, you may come out on top, but don't expect to. Just do something. Right. Go ahead and just take action, because the longer you stick there, it's almost like quicksand. You're going to eventually drown and not do anything, and then
overcoming that inertia. Yeah, overcoming that inertia of inactivity is incredibly difficult. And when you start doing something that's different, it's a great book to read. Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he's got his prequel, the Built to Last, and those are amazing. Jim Collins talks about his flywheel concept, right? So, and in short, those books are about companies that have made radical changes. Kimberly Clark used to be in the paper mill business. Well, at some point they made a decision they had to sell the mills and get into paper products. So they had to radically change what they were doing. Same thing with Procter and Gamble, and same thing with Wells Fargo. Same thing with a number of these companies that are now marquee names in America. At some point, they had a moment where they hit the brick wall at 60 miles an hour. It's like, oh crap, this ain't working. We got to do something.
Yeah.
And so he talks about this flywheel concept. So you start going the direction that you think you want to go, and go back to do something, even if it's wrong, man. Go do something. You start pushing that flywheel. The first couple of rotations, the first few iterations of that flywheel they're painful. Dear God, they're painful. And it's just one of those things. You start pushing this flywheel. Once you get that thing moving and you get some rotation there, and once you get this thing going, you start overcoming the inertia.
Yeah.
You go back. You start learning from your mistakes. Find out what your strengths are. Find out what your weaknesses are. You figure out how to accelerate your strengths. You figure out how to hire for your weaknesses, or you figure out how to compensate for your weaknesses. However you do it, and you keep doing it. And remember this, the more you push on this flywheel, the more it's going to go, the easier it's going to go. And then,
I love that example, by the way. That's a great example.
Oh, I stole it,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, well, you borrowed it. You didn't really, neither one of us are making money here. So,
no, man, it was larceny. I made it straight up larceny.
But you make a good point, though, in the real estate investing world, that getting that first deal done is what really breaks the inertia, as on the flywheel, as you were talking about. So you told me a little bit about your very first deal, and we'll wrap up after this, but you told me a little bit about your first deal, which I think is a hilarious story. Here again, I don't know that I would recommend doing this, but you went out and did it. And because one of the other things the other questions that I get is, how do you get your wife on board? So for those of you who are having trouble with that, Darron had a unique way of getting his wife on board. He came with the first deal. So let us hear about that.
Well, I wouldn't recommend this to everybody. It's one of those things. I'm kind of your I make a good foreman on a construction site for a reason. I'm kind of your hard charging type A personality, and I can be a little direct sometimes. It's kind of hard to believe, but I really
Right. I can't tell that. I can't think up that on that at all through this last 30 minutes we spent together. So yeah.
So anyway, I found a property one day, and it was one of those things where I knew the property was underpriced, and it was a retail property. It was a pretty house. There's a screw you out there that calls talks about the pretty house business, the ugly house business. This was a pretty house. And I knew it was underpriced, and it had a couple little things, but it was under market by a fair amount, about $100,000 under market, for a couple of different reasons. I put an offer in on this house for $610,000, and the seller accepted it, and came home and laid the contract on the counter. And my wife sees it, and she says, "What the hell's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's a purchase agreement." She said, "You're buying a house." Yeah, you didn't talk to me. She reads the thing. She said, $610,000. She said, "We don't have $610,000." And I'll save you some editing. I can't repeat the rest of what she said.
I appreciate that.
But I got my share of motivation that day.
Sure.
And so anyway, she's like, "So how in the heck are we going to buy this house?" And it went from me to we, right?
Yeah, right.
Because now she's inserted herself into this. And I said, "Oh, we're not." She said, "Wait a minute, you got a contract saying we're going to buy this." I'm like, we'll see. Yeah. And I turned around and flipped the contract, and the assignment fee was $20,000. And
nice.
And she, I heard it from her for easily 30 days. We had some very passionate, we had some very exciting conversations. I got more motivation during that 30 days than I did in 3 months of boot camp in the Army.
She's a good drill instructor, huh?
Oh man.
That's awesome. But literally, it was your first deal. You flipped the property. It was a $610,000 purchase price that you had under contract. You flipped it for an assignment fee of $20,000.
Yeah, I flipped the contract to a retail buyer. And the irony of all things was the lady who bought it from me lived right around the corner.
Wow.
She knew that house. She actually knew the people that bought it. Initially, or the people that sold it to me.
Yeah.
Initially, she was slightly peeved that they didn't sell it to her. They sold it to me because they were actually they were acquaintances. They knew each other. And so when I told her that I had it, and she asked me what I was going to do it, I was like, she said, "Well, I'll buy it." I said, "How much?" She said, "What do you got under contract for?" And I said, $630. She said, "Cool, I want it." I was like, "Okay." And that honestly that happened. It's just one of those things. The kind of the one of the old axioms about business. The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Right. Yeah.
I was literally standing in front of that house, kind of scratching my head, thinking,
"What am I going to do?"
Yeah, it's like I got a supportive wife at home, and I am not going to listen to this girl say "I told you so." I'm just not.
Yeah.
Now what? And here she comes. The lady's name was Alice. Here comes Alice, just walking up. "Oh, hi!"
That's awesome. That's incredible.
And so the way it worked out was like I said, I was motivated. I was properly motivated for 30 days, and then one day I brought the check home and laid it on the counter. It was for 18 and some change. Went through escrow, and there's fees that came out of it, so it was 18,300 or 18,400, something like that. And I just left the check on the counter. Didn't take it to the bank. And it sat there for about 2 days. And finally, my wife's like, she's like, "Are you going to put that check for 18,000 in the bank?" Like, "There's a check."
Yeah, play dumb.
And after that, pretty much whatever I did, she just kind of bite her tongue. She's like, "Okay,
all right." Well, you proven your point, right? You knew what you were getting into, and you got her on board. Now,
yeah,
like you and I both said, I don't know that a lot of people can pull that off. But it is one strategy if you're struggling with getting your significant other on board. There's one
You have
strategy
to
you
be,
can consider.
you know, it's one of those things. I guess I learned it from just kind of the upbringing, that I had. I mean, my dad was he was a pretty old fashioned kind of guy,
Right.
and I knew the rules. And there were days that you just make a business decision. It's like, I'm going to go do this, and is the ass whooping with it,
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, this whooping is worth it,
In this
So
case, yeah. Yeah. I mean, how bad could you get whooped when you eventually bring home a check for 18 grand? I mean,
right, yeah,
glad it worked
and
out
so
that way. The story might be different if it didn't. But well, look, Darron, I've enjoyed talking to you and getting to know more about
absolutely.
you and your story. And it is amazing to hear what you and your wife went through. And I'm sitting here. So we've got baby number 3 on the way, and I'm sitting here thinking you have 4, and they're all boys. Wow. So, but thank you. So thank you for spending some time talking with us today. If people
Yeah,
want to reach out and
the time
talk,
we were going through this was the oldest was 5 and the triplets
okay.
were 4.
Oh,
So we had
you have triplets.
yeah.
So
So we
that's
had
a total different dynamic. Wow.
no pressure.
Yeah, you had to figure out something to do. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those things, man. It comes down to gut check time,
Yeah.
and it's time to grind. That's one of the last things I think I'll throw out there is don't be afraid to grind, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this business is. It's a numbers game, and go make offers, figure out how to prospect, figure out how to generate those leads. There's plenty of things out there. I mean, on your Facebook group, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but it's a grind. Just go do it. That's all there's to it.
I appreciate that. And so obviously you're on Facebook. That's the way we connected. But if somebody wants to reach out to you to talk more or pick your brain, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Email works pretty well.
Okay.
Email is Darron, DARRON .hay, HAY @gmail.com.
Perfect. Darron, thanks again. I appreciate it very much. I'm sure
Absolutely.
we'll talk soon, man. I enjoyed talking with you.
I appreciate it. Hey, thanks, sir.
Yeah,
Appreciate
buddy.
it.
Have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend.
Will do. Hey, thank you. Yep. Bye now.